If you've killed seedlings before, don't worry, same numerous times. Today I will be showing you some of the foolproof basics that will ensure that you actually get some plants out of those packets. The thing about seeds is it is truly one of the most rewarding things you can do in gardening. A lot of people would prefer to just go to a garden center or a nursery and buy the seedlings, and that's fair enough for a certain audience. But if you really get into seed sowing and that magic of being able to buy a packet of seed, firstly much cheaper, secondly then being able to sow it and to see the number of plants you can get, and if, like me, you're a bit of a glut, you tend to have too many, you're able to then divvy those up, choose the best seedlings, give the excess away, and that magic and that feeling, that raw feeling, connected feeling to nature, to the earth, to your hobby, to yourself, is really, really something truly special. I would say the first thing that you want to get right from the very beginning is the compost. Seeds need a very fine, very sort of light, airy, textured compost or growing media or sowing mix, whatever you'd like to call it. And this truly is the fundamental first step, because if you have a compost that is too coarse, those little roots aren't able to hold on to enough moisture. If you have a compost that's too heavy, the little emerging seedling will struggle to get through and get to the light. So as airy, as fluffy, as fibrousy as possible. Now that you might have the compost or seedling mix sorted, the next thing to do is to actually look at the seed packet. So today I'm going to show you to sow two very simple seeds, fairly simple I say. The first one are sweet peas, which are just a staple of any garden, and the second is a herb, parsley. Just for demonstration purposes I chose two. So what you want to do firstly is to look at the actual seed packet and just to determine what is the expiry date, because seeds do have a finite lifespan, and the fresher the seeds, the better they will germinate and the better emergence you will have and the less disappointing results you'll have. If you see that the seeds have gone past their expiry date, I wouldn't necessarily say throw them away. It's still very possible to sow them, just sow more than you would, and even if a few seedlings emerge and eventually become plants, then you've gained something. But 2 years or more, probably you're going to have very low success rates. But give it a go, and if you're not too sentimental about wasting a bit of time, then so be it. Rather annoyingly, these two seed packets ironically don't have expiry dates on them, so that's not very helpful, but I do remember having bought them last year, so they've been with me for a year. That should be absolutely fine, especially if you store them in a cool, dark environment. It should be absolutely fine. What you don't want is them standing in a warm house the entire season, getting moisture or having too much variation or fluctuation in temperature. If you can keep them at kind of a constant cool temperature, much better. Some people even put them in fridges, which is also fine. It just keeps them going for a bit longer. But it is an important consideration, because if you do sow seeds and you become despondent because none of them have emerged, most likely it's not your fault, it's the seeds that are outdated. The next thing to consider after you've looked at the seed expiry is obviously the timing. So for example, each seed packet should have an indicative sort of month or period in which to sow. These ones show that they can be sown indoors between October and March. So that's a good fit, because if you're going to sow seeds when the recommendation is not to sow them in that particular month, you're kind of just wasting your time. Saying that, however, I've sown seeds out of season, according to what the seed packet says, and they've still gone. The only thing that you want to try and ensure is the correct temperature and the correct light levels. Most seeds tend to germinate between 18 and 25 degrees Celsius, or for my American friends, 64 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. And sort of anything in that range will work. Some seeds require cooler temperatures, so just do your research, and it's very easy then to try and meet those demands. Right, now we choose the container. Now, sweet peas quite like a deep root run. So they form deep roots, long roots. So I'm going to try and optimize their growing conditions by giving them sort of longer pots. You can do root trainers or root containers. I don't have any, so I'm just going to use these fairly long pots, fill it up with the growing media, and Because this is so light and fluffy and airy, I can just fill it up to the very top, compress it a little bit, because obviously when you water it, it will eventually slump down a bit. Yeah, so I would say kind of almost full to the very top. And you can do this for however many pots you want to sow. A rule of thumb for fresh seed is sow about 20% more than you think you need. A big mistake that a lot of people make, including myself, I still do it after all these years of gardening, is I tend to sow too much. And what you then end up doing is you become indecisive as to which plants you want to throw away, you feel bad for throwing them away, and then you just become slightly overwhelmed. So to avoid that, just think of how many plants do you want at the end of the day, and sow about 20% more than that. And so I'm pretty happy with about 9 plants, because I'm only going to put them up against 1 or 2 frames. So ideally, I guess I would have had a fourth pot here. I don't now, however, so just for this purpose, I'm just going to show you to sow 3 of those seeds in each of these containers. The orange-pink flowers that are this sweet pea variety called Miss Wilmot are truly, truly magnificent. So they are the seeds. I've got 7 seeds, so not ideal, but I will work with what I have. I'm going to aim to try and get 3 per container. So make a little indent like that, not too deep. That is quite a common mistake, is that people tend to plant too deeply. Remember, they are very small. They've only got a limited amount of carbohydrates within, which they then use to send up their first shoot. So 3 in there, and then I shall do 2 in each of the remaining pots. And if you then feel that you need a bit more compost, grab some and cover them up. Alternatively, just sort of move the compost about, just ensuring that the seeds are lightly covered so that they can take up the moisture and use that moisture to start growing, but not be buried underneath too much growing media or too much compost, which then causes them to struggle to emerge. Next, I'm using a seed tray, which is an alternative form, and perhaps one of the future videos I'll make is on the various types of trays and options you have for sowing. So what I use for the sweet peas is good, because I want individual plants and I want to keep them in there and I want them to run down with their roots. For trays, what they're pretty good for is when you want to sow, I beg your pardon, quite a lot of various seeds, smaller seeds perhaps, which you can then thin out, and that will be a different video altogether. So again, fill it up quite full. Use any sort of firm object to just lightly press down the growing media, just so that it compresses a little bit and doesn't sink too much once you've watered it. Right, it's pretty level. I'm pretty happy with how high it is, because again, I'm not going to overwhelm the seeds with compost, so that should do for now. And now I have the seeds in my hands. They are pretty small, as you can see, and so what I really want to try and avoid is sowing too many, because that really does cause problems down the line. So although I'm not going to be too scientific about it and say pick out each individual, I am just going to pick a few with my fingers and just quickly run over the surface and have them displayed or sprayed out as much as possible, just so that they each have their own place to grow to start off and not to be too overcrowded. Again, I don't want 400 parsley seeds growing unless you have an allotment or a parsley farm, but for my garden that number should be plenty. And even then, after they've all emerged, I will probably be pricking them out and thinning them out to a few individual plants. Now that they're there, I can just cover them lightly with a bit of compost again, and once I've done that, to my satisfaction, just using the wooden block again, firm them down so that they're nice and snug, covered. Some seeds, if you do your research, you will read up and discover that some seeds actually need light to germinate from the get-go. So then this step, which I'm doing now, would be skipped. So then you can just fill it up to the very top, firm it down like I did in the previous step, and just sow and scatter the seeds on the surface and leave them as they are. And then they will just germinate in the presence of light. Right, so we've sowed the seeds, they're snug, and the penultimate step, or basically almost the last step, is to water them. Now, this can be tricky because they are very fine, the compost is fine and fluffy, and so the mistake I've made before is actually watering from the top with a watering can. That's not the best approach because it does tend to disturb the soil too much. And what that then does is sort of lift the seed up and mix them all up and make the seed run away onto the surface, and it just becomes a mess. So my best advice would be actually putting it in a container like this. So I filled this up with water. Here are the seeds, and I just gently put them in, and with the capillary action of the water, it will just come up from the bottom, and you can actually leave that in there for a good while. So here are the sweet peas. I'll put them in too, and they will just draw water up in time. I mean, feel free to leave them there for 15 minutes, half an hour even, but pretty soon you'll see the water coming to the surface. I guess it is the penultimate step of watering, because somewhere before or directly after, preferably during, a very basic thing that people tend to forget, and I've done it too many times to count, is to label the seeds. Especially if you're having a day of plenty of seed sowing where it becomes really fun and you just get going with things. And the reason why I wanted to stress this is because, if you pack your seed packets or your seed trays somewhere and leave them for a good number of days or weeks, pretty soon you are going to forget what you've sowed, and then it just becomes a bit of a admin mess to try and figure it out. So the labeling is crucial. So here I'm just going to write sweet pea, and if you care, write the variety. So in this case, Miss Wilmot. And another thing that is good to do is to just indicate the date of sowing, and that really helps because if the seeds don't come up, it will give you an indication of how long ago you sowed and whether you're perhaps being impatient. So on the other label, I will write parsley. And again, if you wanted to be specific, this one's called Plain Leaf 2, which is a really boring name. So I'm just going to say flat leaf because it's not the curly type. And write the date for your own record. And then just stick them in. And that's as simple as it can get, but vitally important because when you are sowing dozens of trays at a time, best to just do this step quite well and quite clearly. When the water has traveled up to the very surface and you can feel that the whole tray or pot are damp to the touch, then enough water has been provided, enough moisture for those seeds to start. So what you can then do is remove them from the watering tray and plant them in your desired position. So seeds need air, oxygen and light to germinate and to emerge. And so I'm providing them with some bottom heat called basal heat in the form of a heat mat, which can be bought pretty cheaply anyway. And then these growth lights, which just provide enough light for them to get going. Because obviously, if you're doing it indoors, then there isn't any sunlight. So once you're happy that they're damp enough, remove them, place them on the heat mats, and put them where there is light. And these lights can be cycled for numerous different hours. So for example, they can be on for 16 hours, off for 8, just enough light to get them going. So if you don't have lights and mats, place them in a tray so that the water doesn't, run off onto your windowsill. Place them on a sunny windowsill, and just check them regularly that they don't dry out completely. You can mist them with a spraying bottle, or just put them back in a watering tray like this and just kind of keep them uniformly moist and damp, and they will be absolutely fine. And within 7, 10, 12, 14 days, depending on the seed type, you will see that bit of magic which really gets the blood pumping. I really hope the whole process of sowing seed can become more of an enjoyable part of the whole process and not as overwhelming as people tend to think it is. It is truly just fun. It should just be fun. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, try again and just keep experimenting with it. I think there are a couple of basics. We've covered them in the video today. Number one is choosing the right compost or sowing media, being light, airy, fluffy, and just, you know, a really nice texture for those little seeds to grow in. The second thing is looking at the expiry date on the seed packet, making sure your seeds are as fresh as possible. Number three is the timing of the sowing. Obviously, you don't want to be sowing at the wrong time of the year. Then, obviously, you need to provide them with enough moisture, enough light, the correct temperature, and just have the patience to see them through. And if you just apply a few of those things that I've said today, you'll be absolutely happy with the results. And yeah, again, this channel is all about blundering to then finally bloom. And that's what we're going to do together. So if you've liked this, please do like the video, leave a comment, and if you feel inclined to do so, please subscribe. It would be wonderful to take you all on this journey. And I will see you in the next video, and thank you very much for watching. Until later, goodbye.